Welcome to Surrender School.
This is the Essential Enneagram Empowered 12-Step Workshop. So what we are talking about now is made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. So we are talking about step 4. That's the step and chapter that we're on. All right. The purpose of step 4 is to get a new attitude and a new relationship with our Creator to discover the obstacles in our path. That's from the big book. That's what Bill W. said step 4 is about, a new relationship with our Creator to help us discover the obstacles in our path. Okay, so I've told you before that my background is software, that I was in software for many, many years. And the type of software I was in was supply chain software. So for 30 years, I was in the business of selling software to warehouses. So I have, because I also was one of the people that implemented them, I have done, I can't even countless inventories in my lifetime, like inventories in warehouses. And an inventory has steps. Some people don't realize this or don't think about it. An inventory has steps. It is a count that doesn't care, good, bad, otherwise. Sold lots of, didn't sell lots of, none of that matters. It's a count. What do we have? Followed by an analysis. And those are separate steps. Now, the key here is in our inventory, right? In our inventory, it basically says, when are the times that the false self has run my life? That's the count that we're doing, in essence, right? What are the thoughts and feelings and instinctive acting out that my ego has done? And that is column 1 and 2 in the 4th step inventory. When are the times that this happened? That's basically the count, right? And then, how has this affected my life? What is the nature of this behavior? That is the analysis. And what's interesting is this is the reason that Bill W. and the people that do the inventories have you do vertically. You know, the list of, and I say up to 20 people that have people, places, things, situations that basically pissed you off or whatever is your brand of, made you feel bad, hurt you in some form, what the harms. And then the next is what's the situation? And then it's followed, right? We do that. And then how is it affecting me and all of that, right? All of the other columns. And there's some inventories have as many as 6 columns. So basically, if we do these as separate things and we understand. So it's really interesting when I came into program. So I've been in the software, in supply chain software, 30 years, came into program 20 years ago. It was like, wait a minute, right? This needs to be done just like an inventory. You don't do it this way, you do it this way, right? You do the count and then you do the analysis as a separate thing. So anyway, and most of you probably have done that, but if you haven't, at least consider it. All right. Made a searching for fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Why might step 4 be difficult for my type? Okay, so first of all, we've all run into people who are searching for the perfect style of inventory. And I think Lori C says something like, it doesn't matter what type you do, so long as you do, just do it, right? So, but the ones will search for the perfect one, right? Whether it needs to be, on an Excel spreadsheet, or it needs to be in a very beautiful notebook with whatever, right? Anyway, but they will search for the perfect style. And once again, all the things that I'm talking about are that ego structure that gets in the way, and it gets in the way of your recovery as well. It's defending you from everything, including recovery. All right. So the type 2, it's really hard for a type 2 to see their own selfishness because they are kind and generous, right? They don't recognize the hook that's there, right? That like Judy C was talking about earlier. Okay. The type 3 is afraid of feelings, so they will sugarcoat their memories. So it's really hard for them to come up with a list. It's really interesting because most people have no problem coming up with lists, but 3s do. They want to do sometimes want to do a very surface level of their, of basically columns 1 and 2. Okay, the type 4, nobody has suffered like I have suffered, and they will stick. They get stuck in columns 1 and 2. And I think I've mentioned this before, either at either last week or at an office hours. There was a woman that was in one of my meetings, and she proudly announced that she had 75 pages of harms, right, from her resentments, 75 pages of resentments. And it's took her something like 5 years to come up with it, right? Oh my God. I'd be like, ah. I will say over and over and over again, you can live in steps 1, 2, and 3, and it is hell. Eventually you will leave program. Or you can live in 10, 11, and 12, which is a really blessed way to live your life. And I'll talk more and more about that as we go through this, but basically where you want to live is in steps 10, 11, and 12. And basically, right, when you live in 10, 11, and 12, then you live clean, seek God, help others. That's how you live your life. That's a way better place to live. Okay. 5, the type 5, they are great observers of others, really good observers of others, but not so much good observers of themselves. So that's kind of where they get stuck, because first of all, they don't take a lot of time for introspection in general. Type 6, what's difficult for the type 6 is fear. And I put plain and simple, but it's very complex also, because there's almost like layers of fear. And we all feel fear, which is why, by the way, often people, they're 6 is almost always, when people say I'm a something or a something, it's almost like a something and a 6. It's a 9 and a 6, or it's a 2 and a 6, or it's a 4 and a 6. That's because because once again, Bill W. talks about fear is that thread, right? That basically it goes throughout our life. It just does, and it drives so many things. But the 6 fear is deeper seated, more complex, and they have that fear response, that physical fear response to anxiety, much more than other types. Okay. For the 7s, because they look toward the future all the time, to them, the past is the past. Let's focus on the future. So it's really difficult for them to go back. Sometimes that gets in the way for them to go back and look at that. And if you're not looking at the past to clean it up, then it comes with you. Okay, and then your ego can win. Okay, so for the 5, quick to make decisions, no endless, and what I say is no endless rehashing is the way that I approach life. I don't go over and over. I try not to beat myself up, and especially since I've arrived at the idea that I'm human. If anybody expects me to be perfect, they're screwed because I'm not. So, and including me, I can't expect myself to be perfect. I'm human and I make mistakes. Okay. But sometimes what happens is it gets in the way, because it's like, I'm not going to rehash that. I'm not going to go over that. I'm not going to, well, you know what? It sticks with me. So I have to. Okay. And then for 9, I'll worry about that tomorrow when I have more energy. And then they say that day after day after day. And once again, that's just that they delay making decisions, delay, whatever. Okay. So journal on this. When has it shown up in your life? And if it hasn't shown up, you may be mistyped. You also may not, but you might be mistyped. Okay. So 2 definitions I want to add here is the moral inventory. This isn't a moral, like I don't know. It's not like this judgy whatever. I don't even think that Bill meant it that way. It just means capable of conforming to right conduct. And there have been many times in my life when I was completely incapable of conforming to right conduct. Right. One of the shares earlier, Diane, I think, right, is like when you were 8 and you stepped up and you did whatever, and you're like, sorry about that, but I needed you to leave those guys alone. Right. Okay. So was right conduct not saying anything? I don't know. Not for an 8, right? It's like, but there would be others that would say, I'm not supposed to do that. So anyway, the idea of moral just basically says, let's take a look at this. And all these words that I'm using, like mistake and maybe fault and those kinds of things, I'm going to define those a little bit better later, but keep that in mind. And then there's something called the triune brain theory, triune meaning 3. And I'm going to talk about the different parts of the brain that drive behavior. Okay. And then if you haven't and feel like it, go ahead and put your number up front. All right. So this is using the Enneagram to help you recognize the nature of your passions, defects, or defenses. And all 3 of those are your passions, what it means in the Enneagram, are your defects. And another way to say that are the defenses that the ego puts up because it believes that it should defend you from, even sometimes from, recovery. Okay. Triune brain theory. At the base of the brain is something called the reptilian brain. And the reptilian brain in all of us is constantly asking, am I safe? Now, this is not true if you're face down on a phone. I've seen people literally here in Vegas walk out in front of a car. All right, because you've kind of shut that part of your brain off. So don't do that. But the reptilian is constantly gauging, am I safe? And you don't realize it because most of us live in a very safe environment. So you don't realize that your brain is always asking, am I safe? But it is. That's at the base of the brain, it's the old brain, and it's called the reptilian brain. The next part of the brain is the limbic system, and it is always asking, how do I feel about this, whatever this is, and how will I act? It's making that decision. And then the third part of the brain of the triune brain theory is the neocortex, which is the part of the brain up front, and it is the part of the brain that learns. And it decides the story that we will tell ourselves. Now, I'm going to give you an 8 example of this, but realize that, right, anger is my deal, right? So this will be a story of anger, and that may not be what shows up for you, but you'll get the idea. Okay, so going along, doing whatever, somebody says something to me, right? My reptilian basically flares up and I am pissed. And then how do I feel about this? I'm angry. And then how will I act? I get in their face. And then the neocortex, that learning part of the brain, right, comes back to me and says, well, of course you were angry. You had every right to be angry. Of course anyone would have been angry in that case, of course. And you should have gotten in their face. That's absolutely the right thing to do. Okay. All right. That is the way my brain before a program worked. And it still works this way, but I've worked a program. Okay. And I learned in this program, anger is fatal to me. It is fatal to me. It will kill me. I cannot do that. Okay. So here is what's interesting. That is a normal ego structure response to the world. In my case, anger, right? That's a normal response. But here's what happens, okay? When we are working a program, the easiest thing to fix is the story that we tell ourselves, right? And I learned, okay, it is the dubious benefit or whatever of normal man, right? That the anger is not mine. I cannot be angry. So I stopped telling myself that it's okay for me to act like that. I stopped telling myself that it's okay to jump in with both feet in the middle of somebody's chest. I can't do that anymore. That story that I told myself dissipates. That's the first thing that goes. That's the first thing is we're working a program, right? Because I don't want to have to make amends. No, I don't like that. That's not fun. I don't want to do that. Especially, I don't like being vulnerable. I don't want to do that. So that's the first thing that goes is the stories that we tell ourselves. The next thing that goes is how will I act, right? I don't act. I don't get in people's face. I don't state my opinion all the time, all of that. And then next, how do I feel about it? Now, instead of there might be momentary anger, but in general, it's like, okay, the last of my anger, and I drive sometimes with Joy. I'll drive and she rides with me, and I'm like cussing at the people who are pulling out in front of me and whatever. And I'm getting better at it. She allows me 2 times that I can do that when we're driving. We're only like on the road for 10 minutes, but hey, 2 times pretty good. Anyway, but the idea is how will I feel about it? And it's the same thing. And I don't express, I don't get in people's face anymore. Really, I can if I need to, but I usually choose not to. And then basically, if something happens that makes me angry, right? I mean, this is the thing where Bill says, these are sick people, right? These people, and even driving, there'll be sometimes I'm like, oh, I scared that guy, right? It's like, okay. And it's an amazing thing to just watch this part of me softening. All right. The last part, which is that reptilian that's always asking, am I safe? That is where the instincts lie. And instincts are so deep. This is like the old brain. It has been around as long as mankind has been around. And those instincts, which is why when we talk about the instinctual variance, this is why I wanted you to take that test and figure out what is your primary or dominant instinct, which one is driving you, right? Okay. So I want to talk for a second about instincts, and I want to talk, I guess before I cover this, I just want to say, usually when I teach deductively, which means I teach big picture and then specifics, right? So we drill down into that. I'm not doing that this time. This time I'm doing inductive reasoning, because I want you to understand, like, specifically how they work in you. And then I'll talk about where that, so right now we're going to be talking about the evidence of it. And then from there, I'll teach like the bigger picture of what the instincts do, the energy behind the instincts. It's next week. This week, I just want to give specific visible evidence. Okay, so instincts, and I chose this picture because this is a flower that broke through asphalt. And that's what happens with instincts, right? We can't cover them up. We cannot ignore them. They are part of what we do. And I'm going to talk about when do they show up in everyone's life, because we have them and they come through no matter what. Next week, we'll talk about the energy of that, which will help us lock in. This is a very complex thing. And nowadays, a lot of the people are teaching the instincts even before the types because they're so burned in, right? I think, and your instinctual drives, that instinct doesn't change. Your dominant instinct, we can soften it, right? We can tone down the dominant one and bring up the repressed one. We can do that. And as a matter of fact, program does that without us even knowing that that's what program is doing, but it does. Okay. I'm going to talk about a 4-step inventory now. And once again, as we're going through this, it'll make more sense here in a minute or two. Okay. This is one of the 4-step inventories that are out on the web, just out on the web somewhere. And it is one of those that the cause expands so that you can have 50 million words if you want that. I do not like that. So I basically put a big X through this. This is not, in my opinion, the way this inventory should work. And I'll explain here in a second why. This next inventory, I think, is better because it has just a little bit of area for you to write, why am I angry? So let me talk for a second about this. If you do your vertical, and I say 10 to 20 names of people, situations, whatever, 10 to 20, not 150, not 75 pages, just a handful. When I first went through, and once again, remember, I lived my life very angry. And I went through, and my sponsor, the very first sponsor I had, said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to blast through this picture of a room filled with cobwebs. We're going to blast through the center. That's what we're going to do this first time through the steps. And then later we'll go out and we'll clean out the corners. But right now it's right in the center. What's coming up for you, right? I am so blessed to have had her as a sponsor because otherwise I would have been just a morass of all of this crap, right? And it's very, very helpful. So why am I angry? So you could say something like, I'm angry at my brother John because when I was 2, he stole my blanket. When I was 6 months, he stole my pacifier. When I was 5, he stole blah, 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 right? You can do all that. But you don't. You say, John, and why am I angry? Because he steals from me. He stole from me, right? Okay. I worked with someone who was, I was sponsoring. And I said, oh, no, no, you don't get to write 100, 3 pages on this person, no matter how bad they were. And she said, oh, I have to. And I said, why? And she said, because I might forget. And I'm like, you haven't forgotten for 50 fucking years. I doubt you're going to forget now, right? It's like, I think you got it. I think it's there. The memory's there. It's not going to leave. So anyway, the idea here is just get it on paper and know what it is. The specifics of this belong with a therapist, not with your sponsor, not here. Here, what this is basically, what is the person and what am I angry at, right? And it can be in less than 10 words. So you do 10 people, 10 words, that's it. Because the goal is to get it done to enable growth. It is not to get all of your shit from your life onto the paper. That is not the goal of step 4. The goal of step 4 is for us to be able to move forward, to be able to grow. And we cannot do that if you are stuck in living in in columns 1 and 2. You just can't do it. All right, I'm going to talk about a new 4-step inventory that I found in my research, and I love this inventory. I'm hoping next week when everybody comes back to share that you can tell me, was this helpful, right? Was this cool? Because I think it's very cool. I reached out. I don't know if you can even see that, but it's called the 9 and 12 workbook by a man named Dr. Don Carroll. I reached out to him and asked him for permission to use this and to actually make copies of it and use it. And he said, sure, go ahead. So anyway, I'm very excited about that. What you will get and what Joy will be posting during this session so that you have it right after the session is there'll be one for each of the different types, and I'll go in specifically what makes this so cool. But anyway, for each of the different types, there is a specific sex conduct, fears, and resentments. So those three things are there. And they look really ugly because I took a picture with my phone, but that's because I don't expect you to use this like what you're getting from us, to use that with your sponsees or even with yourself. If you want those, buy this book, the 9 and 12 workbook by Dr. Dawn Carroll, and then you'll have that, make copies, and you can use it. But I think it's very cool. So let me go in. This is a sample for the sex conduct of the 9, but I'm going to cover it so that you see what all it does. Okay, so the first thing is, notice under affects my, it now has subcategories that are the instincts. So the instincts are social instinct, the security instinct, which is self-preservation instinct, and the sex instinct. Okay, so basically we have social, self-preservation, and sexual are the 3 instincts, and sexual meaning 1-to-1. I'll explain in more detail what that is, but basically those 3 things, because all the stuff falls under that. I was amazed. I'm looking at this. Does it fall under it? And yes, it does. Besides the ambition, it does fall under that. It's awesome. Okay, so that's the first thing that's there, is it basically helps you figure out your instinct as part of this, which I love. The next thing is, off on the far right of column 4, it has more detailed information, more specific information that you can use according to type. And remember, this is the type 9. So not only does it say, was I dishonest? Was I selfish? Was I that stuff? But also, were they ruminating or procrastinating, right? Did the 9 do that? Were they being stubborn and apathetic? Okay, were they being disengaged from the world? Were they checking out? Is that what the problem? Is that what caused the problem? Because remember, so often, and Bill talks about this, we step on step on the toes of our fellows, and we're like, why is that person upset? What the hell is that about, right? Because we stepped on their toes. Now, it's not always our fault, if you will, but this is something else. This box that just came up, the question that asked, not what was my wrong, what were my wrongs? This is, what is the exact nature of my wrongs, my faults, my mistakes, my defects, my shortcomings? And I want to talk for a second. I'm going to go a little bit further into nature. I want to talk about what basically the point of step 4 is for us to come up with the nature of our defects, mistakes, shortcomings, because there will be a nature of it. And almost always that ties back to the instinct. That's what will happen, right? It will tie back to that instinct. So that's what specifically we're talking about. Next week, when we talk about 5, I'll go into more detail of that, because then we're actually talking about the nature of that, right? That's when we actually share the nature of that. Okay. Notice this circled area. That's the part that I'm going to be talking about, and I'm going to add it to the bottom. If you remember on the thing where you fill in, the fill-in sheets that you have, at the bottom it says the nature of. These are the columns that I'm talking about here, and you'll be able to see this because Joy's posting those right now, so you can look them up after the session is over. Okay. So that for the 9 is ruminating or procrastinating, and so forth, right? So just so that you know, that's what we're talking about, and that goes at the bottom of your sheet. Okay, and I'm going to cover that right now on all of these. How are we doing? Okay, we're good. All right, so once again, the 1 is a merciful teacher or tenderhearted teacher. The 2 is an intuitive healer. The 3 is an inspiring champion, and this is what you are at your best, your true self. The 4 is a creative alchemist. The 5 is a kind wizard. The 6 is a courageous pathfinder. The 7 is a joyful visionary. The 8 is a lion-hearted protector, and the 9 is a gentle mystic. All right, so now we're going to go into, and we're look at this sheet again, but what we're going to be talking about. Oh, by the way, you'll see at the top of your sheet is an S blank / S blank. That is where the instincts come in. Don't put anything there yet, because I don't want you to do that. You took a test, and it should tell you your dominant instinct, but you'll put that in after we've covered next week, because between this week and next week, this is just too big of a thing to cover all at once. So I want to be sure I cover it and tie it back to the actual program, right? To our 12 steps. Okay. So this is what I'm talking about here is, notice this circle, right? that happens to be the 9 example, but what we're talking about here, that's where that's at. Okay, so what is the nature? So for a type 1, the nature of your those columns that are adding, and I love this because 1 is like perfect, and I think that ties to what was said earlier. Jody, I think you're the one that said it, right? Is what is the nature, right? So was I selfish? Was I blah blah blah, right? The typical 4, the typical, not type 4, the typical 4th step inventory asks that question. Was I dishonest? Where was I dishonest? Blah blah blah. This asks, were you being perfectionistic? Were you being resentful? Were you being judgmental? Which is very much like that's ones will show up in the world that way, right? So was I being those things? And did that step on the toes of my fellows, right? That's what that's talking about. So that's the 1. And once again, from this book, right? So I basically just grabbed those and put those in here. Okay. So let's move on to the 2. For the 2, those 3 columns, what is the nature? Is trying to control others so that they will like you. Did you do that? Were you being self-important? Did you have a false sense of humility? Were you being possessive? So those are some of the things. And once again, I love this because it feels like it drills down further into how was I acting? What was I doing? That stepped on the toes of my fellows, right? What specifically was I doing? I really like, there's something called, and I think, Joy, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. I think it is out on the website, out on the Surrender School website, which is the character defect list. And it basically says, was I selfish? And here's what we mean by selfish, right? And there's a bunch, I call them questions. They're not quite questions, but was I this, was I this, was that, is the way that I do that, right? But this one is specific by type, which I really like. I think it's a cool addition to that. Okay, so these are good questions for the 2 to ask. In this case, was I these things? Not just was I selfish, was I trying to control others so that they would like me? Was I doing that, right? That's the 2. Okay. For the 3, what is the nature? Was I being emotionally detached? Was I trying to look good? Was I being vain and self-promoting? So sometimes what will happen, my sister is a 3, and every once in a while you can just see her just detaching because it's just too much emotion for her. She does not like emotion. And I just think that's really fascinating to watch that. So was she, right? So as a 3, was I being emotionally detached instead of like leaning in? Was I leaning back from that? Was I trying to look good? Was that my main motivation? Was I being vain or was I being self-promoting? Okay, those are some of the gotchas that these different types have. And what's really interesting is when I cover the general instinctual stuff next week, all of this, that is when I think all the stuff starts coming together. It really does come together nicely, but it almost feels like at the end of today, we're going to be pending. You're waiting for the resolution to something. So anyway, hang in there with me. All right. For the 4, the creative alchemist, what is the nature? Were you being self-absorbed? Were you getting lost in self-pity? Were you being envious of others? Right? Those are three potential things. And once again, all of these, and most people aren't all of them because this basically ties to the different instincts depending on what that is. But were you any of these things? Okay. For the 5, was I being secretive? Was I trying to live life in my mind instead of in the world? Was I being emotionally withholding? Was I holding back emotions? Then for the 6, was I being pessimistic, fearful? Was I being fearful? Was I being in worry or doubt? And worry, and once again, fearful is it triggers, to me, the definition for fearful is it triggers that fear response in me. I'm anxious enough that I've triggered this fear response. Being in worry or doubt isn't quite that strong, but it's pervasive. It's just like this constant buzz. It's like people that have tinnitus and there's this constant buzz. That's what worry or doubt. It's not quite wringing of hands, but there's this constant pessimistic, bad things are going to happen. I have a bad feeling about all of that. It's like living under a cloud, in essence. Okay, which is why that's a separate thing that's there. Okay, for the 7, what is the nature of your mistakes, defects, that kind of stuff, right? Wrongs, being scattered or excessive, being caught up in planning and anticipation instead of being present, and being caught up in the need for intensity, right? These are the people that jump out of airplanes. with a parachute, obviously, but these are those people. Okay. For the 8, was I being dominating or confrontational? Was I seeing people as objects? Was I being in lust for power and things? So I'm going to tell a couple stories here. When I went away to college, so I had a group of friends who are still my friends. We have a group of 6 women that have been friends since we were in the 8th grade. And I remember when I went away to college, when I came back, I was surprised that they moved on. I mean, not like away from me, but they had lives. Right? They actually they fell in love, they had kids, it's like, what? So yeah, I didn't realize. I mean, I think that's seeing them as objects, like I put them on the shelf and they were just gonna be in stasis until I came back. And I didn't realize I was doing that, but yeah, I think so. And being in lust for power and things, I don't know that I lust for power. I'm not sure I ever did that. I don't know about that. Maybe that's a blind spot, but certainly things. I used to have 16 sets of dishes. I'm not kidding, 16 sets, all at the same time, because every holiday needed its own, and every each of the different seasons needed its own, and right. Anyway, I have several sets of dishes, but certainly not 16 anymore. So yeah, needing things more, right? It could be my 7 wing a bit, but okay. All right, and I've talked a lot about being dominating and confrontation. Okay, and then finally, for the 9, ruminating or procrastinating, being stubborn or apathetic, being disengaged from the world. So basically checking out. All right, so this is all going to pen in when, once again, it'll all be more understood. I'll say that next week. All right, so don't forget office hours. I love when people come to office hours. It's so much fun to speak with people individually. I love doing that. But try your inventory sample against those enhanced inventory pages and see if you learn anything new. Does it give you any new insights, right? Because I really I just think this is so cool, and I can't wait to hear, did it give you new insights? Okay, now you're also going to read chapter 5, but this is what I want you to do. Read your own type only, all 3 instinctual variants, but your own type only. Way too much information if you read the whole chapter. It's like, your head explodes. So just read your own type this week for sure. And then, can you determine your sequence? What is your dominant? What is your middle one? And then what's the repressed one or the lower one, right? So you have all 3 of them. Which one is dominant is the one we really want to look at. And then just read page 71 and 72. And that is it. So now we're open for questions and sharing, and I'm going to stop sharing. Cool. It's as if I had timed it.
Thank you for recovering with Surrender School.